Awesome. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. If it doesn't turn out well, you can blame Steve Waterman because he was the one that sent a message and said, "Hey, do you want to talk about Pico balloons or high altitude balloons?" I said, "Sure. I like to talk about anything." So uh, here we are. I think this is my first time attending the meeting, not because I haven't wanted to, but because my schedule is pulled in 10,000 directions. But from the background, I hear lots of good things, and I appreciate all the hard work you guys have been doing with trying to make amateur radio a better place. So uh, we'll move in real quick. A little bit of history about myself. I'm a retired fireman and paramedic from Greenville, North Carolina. Did that for 20 years, and I think I'm on career 3 now. I'm a disaster and communication specialist for a healthcare coalition. So some of you may have heard about healthcare coalitions, but we make up pretty much the whole eastern part of the state here, cover 29 counties and all the hospitals in that region. And my job is pretty much facilitate communications and IT support as it relates to MCOM. So that's a good retirement job. And then the other side job, I teach ComL, ComT, and AuxCom, one of the contract instructors for DHS. So I probably, if I haven't seen you, I may see you at exercises. I do a lot of traveling across the country. We'll be in Wisconsin next week for SimCom, an exercise they're having. So got to make a lot of good friends. So tonight we'll talk about Pico balloons, and I have to give credit because by far I don't feel that we're the front runners in this, but Bill Brown, WB4ELK, and Tom Medlin, W5KUB. Some of you probably know those guys are pretty popular. Those guys really do a lot of work with this. So everything that I'm going to present to you is in conjunction with things they've done and things we have followed. And both of those individuals have been tremendous mentors to us with doing Pico ballooning. It's kind of unique. So I have the Healthcare Coalition represented, but so we have a ham club in the Healthcare Coalition, and it works out really well because we can bring folks in and get them to help with MCOM, with especially on the healthcare side. But we do a lot of cool projects like this on the side, and it's a good way to recruit. But the other thing is the Pico ballooning group on Groups.io. That's a very small, pretty tight group, and it's just a tremendous amount of information goes through there. And there's some guys that really like they eat and breathe this stuff all day, all night, and we pretty much try to catch up. So what you see, just there's going to be a lot of pictures in these presentations because that's just how virtual stuff is. You see the actual transmitter payload is on the right, and you can see we're going to look a little more in depth on it. And you see a scale on the left, and if you notice, that's a little swivel. For a fishing line swivel on there, and it's one of the smallest ones you can buy. And yes, we weigh every single thing that we put on the payload. So it gives you an idea that we are measuring something that's small, that is 0.114 grams, because all those things add up when we start talking about this type of ballooning. And I need to go back. I always refer to this, and I'm not the originator of it, but this really is the poor man's space program. Most of us can't afford to launch rockets and make outer space with them, but we definitely can launch some payloads up in the upper atmosphere, well, in the atmosphere, and make them go around the world a few times and do some really cool things. So, a lot of people think balloons, the younger folks, they think of World War II, and you see balloons up for observation, but there's a lot of balloons in the air, and they range from different sizes and different payloads, but everything from internet connectivity to emergency response, where a lot of the large wildfires, balloons will be up in the air supplying broadband data below, overhead repeating, all sorts of stuff. So one of them that was very popular was the Google Loon project, and that kind of has gone in different directions, but at any time you can look on ADSB Exchange and some of the other platforms out there and see some of these larger balloons. And we'll talk about the heights that they travel. That's a big key. And when you start talking about size, this is definitely not the largest ones, but this is a good comparison of size. You can see, you know, the looks like generator, air compressor, things down on the bottom, and of course an individual standing on the bottom, and about how large that balloon is. And remember, that balloon is still very small, so as it goes up in the atmosphere, it does get bigger. Notice the amount of gas cylinders that you see over here on the bottom right-hand corner. And we'll talk about that. So as the balloons get bigger, it definitely gets more expensive to launch them, and especially with the type of gas that folks use. On the other hand, what we're going to talk about is stuff that's a lot smaller here. And, you know, this is the opposite end of the spectrum. So you can see balloons vary in different sizes and shapes and materials, but the smallest payloads are pretty much what you're looking at here on the left, and that's the size of a quarter. So it's hard to believe that we can power, have GPS coordinates, and actually do some other telemetry and send that from something so small. So something that's really neat is that over the last few years, this has become something that everybody can kind of do now, where the technology was just really hard to get something that small and that lightweight to get up there. And like I said, those front runners, Bill Brown and some of the other ones, were the first ones to kind of get a lot of this going. But so what we're working on is a super pressure balloon. So when you think of a hot air balloon, that's pretty much a zero pressure balloon. It's vented at the bottom, and what we're working on is a super pressure, ultra long duration. And once it gets up to its float altitude, there is no adjusting other than outside elements, whether it be the weather or whether it be leaking through the membrane. So once it reaches that float altitude, we no longer have control over it from that point. So some of the balloon material, this is really the hot topic, you know, and I recognize some of the call signs on the group here that do fly. I see their call signs. Some of these balloons have really made a lot of progress over the last year, especially. And I mentioned Tom Medlin. He's got one up now that's been up for, I want to say, maybe a year or so. And it's a newer balloon. It's a Yokohama balloon that you see more like on the left-hand side of your screen right here. And these balloons we've been getting from overseas, and so this is kind of an experimental phase on these balloons, but so far they've been really performing well. The standard, I want to say, upper end balloon that everybody's been using for years has been the SBS balloon, and that is the one you see on the bottom right. And that one went up to about, if you calculated everything correctly, had a light load, it'd go up to 45,000 feet or so. The interesting part with the balloon on the left that you see, that one, I think that Tom has up, I want to say they are up maybe around 48,000 now. So they're actually a little bit above where the SBS is rated at. And then you can see some other ones, and folks have tried all different types of shapes, sizes, gas volumes. It's really interesting. One of the great things about this topic is it's all about experimentation. So this is something you go out in the back and you try different things, and it's kind of like launching rockets. You know, Elon Musk, the first probably 15, 20 times didn't go so well, crash and burn. And if you fly these balloons and you're pushing things to the absolute extreme, you're going to crash and burn a lot. And we have, for sure. So talking about payloads, they come in different sizes, and this is just an example. On the right, I just have a picture that I took from Tom, and it's the general setup of it is the balloon, and then we have the upper part of a dipole antenna. We have the payload that has the solar panels, power, and then we have the bottom of the dipole that hangs below. And usually we put a little bit of weight on the bottom to try to keep that antenna in a vertical format and not just flopping all over the place. But that's what you see. So there's the payload. There are solar panels attached to it, a variety of different sizes. The bottom left, you can see that payload there weighs about 7.53 grams. So does anybody know how much a quarter weighs? That's the quiz question for tonight. That is less than a quarter. So very, very interesting as far as weight. That's the key here is making things very light. And the other thing to go back to is you see the antenna. So 20-meter dipole antenna at 34 feet. So obviously you can predict where we're going to be transmitting that. So this is this is a picture of another one of Tom's on the right-hand side here. You can see how small that is in his hand. And the one on the left side here is the last one that we flew. It was actually NC4ES-2. And this is one of the Zactec trackers, a little bit larger and weighs a little bit more, but it held up pretty well. And to give you an idea, and I'll just say the disclaimer here, I'm not being sponsored, paid, or anything from anybody, so very frank conversation. Anywhere from $100 to $150 or so per payload, per board. And then you count all the other materials that you have, the antenna, the balloons. So the balloons range anywhere from, $5 a piece for the very cheap Chinese balloons up to $150 and even more for the high-end balloons. So on average, you're talking maybe $300 or $400 per launch to send these up. So, and you're not going to get them back, and we'll talk about that. So it's every time you do that, it's $300-400 out. But great experience though. But here you could see it weighs the one we had weighs 7.27 by itself, and that one actually performed very well for us. Here's a closer look. You can see it's got some caps on it, and we'll talk about how that works. Solar panels essentially charge the caps, and the caps time and send a burst out, 20-meter whisper, and they repeat that cycle over and over again. And of course, only transmitting during the day. During the night, goes to sleep, and as soon as the sun angle is appropriate and charges those caps up, then comes back to life. The interesting part, you could almost, ours was up for, I want to say almost 3 months or so, and you could just about pinpoint the sun angle and where you thought that payload was, and I could tell you just about every day where it was and what time it would turn on. Pretty cool. So you could see the right-hand picture. The antennas are wrapped around some drink bottles there, and that antenna is so thin it's literally the size of just bigger than a human hair. Really, it's magnet wire, and it's very, very thin and very lightweight. Here's another picture of one of Tom's payloads here, and you could see, the best thing about experimenting is trying different things. So you could see a piece of styrofoam and made a little bit of structure to it, and you could see the solar panels laid on top, the cap, and of course his board that he is using in the center there. The pictures on the left, really critical, and this is where everybody does the experimenting, is the sun angle. So it depends whether we're flying stuff in the winter or in the summer on what the angle of those panels are, obviously based upon how high the sun is. So everybody tries to squeeze as much time as they can out of those solar panels down to the lowest degree elevation they can. So in general for us, about 23 degrees elevation was where all of our stuff would kind of wake up and get enough power to charge those caps and send it out. So interesting, those of you that know about Whisper, it sends that burst out, and there's a few different sites that decode that traffic and convert it through scripts and different things. But it's very genius how that information gets sent. Some of the payloads actually will do some other telemetry, such as temperature and some other things. The Zactec boards we use were very basic. So we were doing GPS, and we were doing height, and you can see here we could see the signal to noise ratio, the drift, how much we were off frequency to the receiving station, the distance, and of course our altitude. Same thing here. LU7AA has a site, and a pretty nice mapping site that he has with it too. And this is what the raw data looks like. So the biggest thing here is looking at the height on the right hand side, and of course all the the other things. And it's pretty neat how it converts some of that data to know where the height is. It doesn't actually come out raw like that. It actually is a different format. All right, so here's the first balloon we launched, and we had a nice area, very nice launch site here. And just like everything else, I think our first launch, everything went really well. We got up to I don't know, 38, maybe 40,000 feet, and for whatever reason, we had a failure and crash and burn. So there's another 300. We took a little bit different approach on the second run we did here, and of course we're flying an SBS 13 balloon, and you can see on the left-hand picture way in the back we are flying hydrogen as the gas. So most of these balloons you're flying helium or hydrogen. Hydrogen has a little bit better lifting capability, and a little bit harder to get a hold of. If you don't know, if you go to your local air gas company and say, hey, I want a M cylinder, H cylinder of hydrogen, you're not going to be able to get it. You're going to probably have to fill out some paperwork, and they're going to want to do a little bit of background investigation because it's not the average thing that most folks go to the air gas supplier for. But at any rate, some folks do use helium, and you can get that obviously and at the party maker store and things like that. Note that some of that helium is not the cleanest. So we use hydrogen, and you can see that large cylinder in the back. We've launched probably seven or eight, I think now, and it's we haven't even touched it. I'd say less than 5% of the gas we've used. So it doesn't take much gas at all. And the picture on the right, you can see that is when we fill these balloons, it's they're literally just enough to lift that payload that only weighs maybe 7 to 14 grams, and get it moving vertically. And of course, there's a lot of measuring that goes with that. So we're using scales, measuring the payload, measuring the gas, the lifting capability, and that is a critical thing to ensure you have the right gas, because obviously you put too much gas in it, as that gas expands, as it goes up in the atmosphere, then you have a failure. And if you don't have enough gas, you may not be able to get up, or you definitely, your duration is much less. So it's a balancing act. Notice the gloves, everything is as clean as we possibly can get it, trying to keep oils and things off the membrane of the balloon. And a very delicate process, especially with sausage fingers that I have. All right, so another thing that NOAA has, this was actually one of our balloons. This was the Dash 2. At this picture, when it was taken, the balloon was actually over Egypt, not far from Cairo. And NOAA has some good predictors with height and wind and where they think that balloon will go. So you can punch in all the information, and it will kind of give you a guidance on where it thinks the balloon will go. And here, this was on, looks like APRS, looking at it from the background. Same thing here, and you could actually see Cairo there over to the right. And, at that time we were flying about 42,000 feet and zipping across, no problem. To give you an idea, I don't have an elaborate station at my house. I just have a homemade dipole up in a pine tree, and I can usually receive the balloon when it all the way to Africa, from going east from North Carolina, and west. I usually can pull it when it gets near Hawaii. So that gives you an idea. And the power output, usually about 20 milliwatts. It's next to nothing, and on those that small wire. So it's when you're at 42,000 feet, though, that you have a big advantage. Here, the other interesting note, when you look at the telemetry stuff, you can see the sun angle at this particular time was 32.2 degrees, what it was calculated there at that position. Here was another one, and this was called HabHub, and I saw some traffic recently that this site might be actually on its way out or discontinued. This was another great resource, and on average, we could probably pull it up. There's probably, I'm going to guess, maybe 15 or so balloons that are flying right now. So there's stuff always going on, and you can see. On the LU7AA website, this was the map I was referencing, and essentially you could see it's all the spots that recorded the telemetry on Whisper, and it will actually and mark them all as spots. So very, very interesting to see where the balloon's being heard and how far. And it's not uncommon for 3, 4, 5,000 mile receptions from that. Here was one of Bill's. We made it right at 2 laps around on the Dash 2, and we actually crashed in Iran. And there was, the running joke was it got shot down, but the reality is that it's a balloon. It's up at 45,000 feet. It's clear, transparent, and it has a 7-gram payload. Of course, you can receive it, but it's not very visible. And we'll talk about some of the. We get a lot of questions a lot of times. Says, well, how do you do that? Aren't you afraid a plane's going to hit it? And we can touch on that before we finish. But here was one of Bill's. It went around 6 times. Flying at 40,000 feet and was in the air for over 75 days. So it is really cool. And I could tell you, when we did ours, we had a following, and there was folks literally every day that would we would put status on Facebook and social media, and there was folks every day that were, man, where's the balloon at? And they were not even radio people. They were excited. They're like, man, where's it at today? And so it's really, really cool thing to do. All right, so talking about weather, this is probably one of the bigger things, is launching the balloon in the right weather. And one of the sites we use is, of course, we use the aviation forecast with winds aloft, but this one's very graphical, easy to use. It's called Windy. You could do a lot of information with it. And here we're actually showing I got my, stand by one second. I got my participant box here in the way. See if I can get out of the way. Maybe not. I'm operating kind of light tonight. I'm on a surface, so don't have multiple screens. I believe the first picture here was somewhere, maybe it's on the right, maybe 29,000 feet or so. What I want you to look at is the purples are and this was actually, I took this today and saved it. So you can actually see where that low pressure system is off the Maryland, Delaware coast there. What you see in these purples and whites, that's your high speed. The white up in towards the top right, that's over 100 knots. So, if we can get a balloon in this jet stream here, that's really going to benefit us. Oop, wrong way. Sorry. Get my bearings here. Yeah. So here was the two. This was the lower, the lower altitude, and obviously you could see those whites aren't there anymore. So when you start talking about where we want to get to, what elevation is, it's really between 35 and 48,000 feet generally is where we're going to find the highest winds. Once we get above that 46 and going up towards 50, those winds really start to die, almost to the point in some cases it's literally calm, nothing. So it's very interesting. That one balloon that Tom has up right now, it's on that high end, 48,000 feet or so, and it's just kind of meandering around. It's not in a race to get anywhere. The ones we get down in the lower altitudes, we can circle the Earth on average in about 14 days. And that's, up moving at 120 knots down to 50, maybe even much lower. Some days it's very slow. So that's where we're trying to capture. Now, the next biggest thing is this is cloud tops. So this is what I took today. And you can see down South America, those reds and pinks are 40, 50,000 foot cloud tops. So if these balloons get into the clouds at all, into any moisture, any ice, any of that stuff, it's gone. It's not going to survive. So it's very important to we don't have control over it, but when we do launch and we look at where it's going, we try to make sure that it's a good time. And for the most part, the balloons in the northern hemisphere, for the most part, they stay in the northern hemisphere. Some of them have dropped down below, and of course that's for a variety of reasons. But this is a big one. So as that balloon is going around the Earth, we're constantly looking at what's ahead of it and these cloud tops, because we're trying to dodge it, and it's we're always rooting to try to get past it. I'm not going to show you this video. We did one of the launches. We actually took a drone and followed the balloon up until it was no longer safe to do so, and it's on YouTube. The link is right there. You can pull that up after. It's nothing special, but it is kind of cool to see what the balloon looks like and watch it ascend and kind of get what the background looks like there. So another question is what are we decoding this on? For folks that are not familiar, WSJTX in the whisper mode is usually the most common piece of software folks are using to decode this. So it doesn't take much: an HF radio, a sound card modem, and you can go on right now and decode balloons all day, all night long, and spot them up to the internet. There's some other ones out there. FSK View is pretty neat to kind of see where the signals are, and it will actually label them so you can visually see which signal is who. And it is kind of cool to be home and watch a balloon that you've launched that's in Africa transmitting and see it on your screen. So it's pretty cool. And those of you that want more information, I'm not going to go in depth about Whisper, but it's a very weak signal, low power radio mode. All the information you want down here in the wiki, and you can look that up anytime. Probably the biggest thing to look at is the baud rate. So 1.4648 baud, speed demon. So it's not fast by any means. All right, another interesting thing about high altitude or Pico ballooning is there are some radio silence areas across the world, and 3 of them in particular is the UK, Yemen, and North Korea are the most critical ones. So most of these transmitters that are being supplied by vendors do turn themselves off, and they know where they're at in the world. And as soon as they clear that area wherever the parameters are set, then she will start transmitting again. But obviously Yemen and North Korea, those are pretty predictable. Probably, don't want to transmit over those. The UK, people are always, why the UK? And I don't know that reason, but yeah. So this was NC Furious-2, and these were all the countries we passed on lap 1. And you could see we like making patches and logos and things. So each time we do a flight, we make different, a flight patch, if you want to call it. And we track the countries we flew over. So that was, we did fly not far from Mount Everest, and of course, across the Pacific. And so really, really cool stuff. It's a lot of fun. So that's about what I have on this. I figured there are going to be some questions. The one thing is talking about FAA requirements, and what are people say, oh, what happens if an airplane hits it? So real quick, the down and dirty on that is there's FAA Part 101, has some parameters in there on what these payloads can be. So it has to be under a certain weight, total, the braking strength has to be under a certain amount. So essentially these type of payloads, they're exempt from those rules. And really they're designed, if they do get ingested in an engine, jet engine at 45,000 feet, they pretty much disintegrate, through the engine, and there shouldn't be a lot of ramifications. To my knowledge, there hasn't been any incidents involving these type of balloons with aircraft, and they don't have radar shields, none of that stuff. So it's like I said, very lightweight stuff. Of course, those are FAA rules. As that balloon travels the world, those rules change a little bit. So this is there is a risk there, but overall, everybody tries to minimize that risk, and the likelihood of that happening is so minute. But we do get folks a lot of times that give us a hard time with that, and that's not very responsible. Well, it's going to be okay. So what questions do you have that I can answer, if any?
Well, I have now taken the spotlight off of you, so we can see the people that's got some questions. Need some hands up, folks. We're going to have some questions. Barry, what are we doing in chat?
I got one from Michael in Los Angeles. What is the best time of year to launch?
Great question. So we launch usually in the winter, and the main reason is those cloud tops. So of course we have a little bit more lift in the winter, and it's a little bit easier on the balloon. So when we're filling gas and filling things in a inside environment, we try to match the outside environment. So if we're inside and it's 90 degrees inside of a warehouse, and we're going out into 30 degrees, we have to compensate for that. So during that fill process, we try to make sure that temperature is about the same. But the main reason is the winter, fall, winter, early spring, is to try to dodge a lot of those high storm tops. And yeah, so the other thing I left out, and that's a good one, was APRS. So some of these balloons do, instead of transmitting 20 meters, you can transmit 30 meters. You can alternate 20 meters, 30 meters. And based on propagation, you might be better off with one than the other. And then of course, APRS. A lot of folks on 2 meters just use APRS. The big thing with that is that with APRS, some of those frequencies change as you go around the globe. So that has to take into account for that. But the disadvantage with the APRS is we don't have those long haul spots being reported. So if you get into an area of the world, parts of Russia and some of the other countries that don't have a lot of infrastructure, you may lose track of that balloon for a period of time until it comes back and somebody's reporting that. So you're 100% reliant on those spots being reported as it goes around.
Okay, I don't see hands up yet. There's one. Finally, take it away, Eric.
Yeah, I was curious, Matt, what the benefit is of hydrogen versus helium.
Yeah, the main benefit, and there's a little bit of research out there on the size of the molecule, helium versus hydrogen, and how it leaks through the membrane. And if I'm not mistaken, and this is just going off top of my memory, that hydrogen actually leaks through the membrane or has the potential to leak more, but hydrogen has a better lifting capability. So if we put the same balloon, loaded it with the same gas, usually the helium is going to be at least a few thousand feet lower. Most of the helium balloons you'll see in the upper 20s, low 30s, where the hydrogen we're getting a little bit higher, 38 to 45. So it's really about the lifting.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, sir. There was one question I saw here. Do you need permission from FAA before launching? And I think I hit that one. The answer was no. Some balloons you do and have to put a radar shield, file a NOTAM, and do all that. With these, no, but there's some common sense. We don't want to launch next to an airport, on a final for a runway, all that stuff. So we try to stay away as best we can from that. On balloons that last a long time, what percentage is over water versus land? That's a good one. It really depends. Some of them have gotten hung up in Alaska and over Greenland and sit there and do 3 or 4 loops, and some of them get stuck in the Pacific. So if one of them gets stuck in one of those storms, and some of them have gone around and around 3 or 4 times and haven't made a lot of progress. So that the balloon that Tom has up now at 48 and change, that one hasn't made it around the Earth, but it may be on lap 2 if I'm not mistaken. But it's because it hasn't been moving very fast, so it kind of just meanders around. So the answer is it all depends. It could stay over water a long period of time if it's just meandering around.
All right. I don't see any more hands.
Awesome. So there's some contact information here. Feel free to reach out, and we can definitely share our experiences. We have 10 trackers or payloads that are kind of in the hopper. So we have at least 10 more launches ahead of us. We slowed down during COVID just for a variety of reasons, but it's time to launch another one. So we will be doing that soon, and feel free to track us on social media, Facebook, or we do have a website. I think I did include that, Dan, when I submitted the information. And everything on here is TLP white, so nothing OPSEC. Everything is clear.
All right. Matt, when we're done with the presentation here, can you send me preferably in PDF? I'll take it whatever format you got.
Yes, sir. PDF would probably be best because of the size, but I'll send that to you as soon as we get off.
Sounds good. Looking for more hands, looking for more questions here. This is a good presentation. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me.
I have one question that came out earlier when you were introducing yourself, and the thing is want to know more about your activities with the CISA.
Okay, good question. I'm one of the contractors, so I teach classes, and you'll see me if you have a COML, communication unit leader, technician, or AUXCOM. I will. I'm one of those instructors, and we do a lot of exercises as well. So I encourage you to work through your state reps, and the states are offered technical assistance programs or offerings every year, and they could be classes or exercises. And the AUXCOM program is really accelerated, and over the last year really has started to be integrated with a lot more communication exercises at the public safety level. So definitely a great thing. Encourage you to engage with that.
Okay.
Matt, can you talk a little bit about what you did in Michigan, what you're going to be doing in Wisconsin, what you did in White Sands, what you did in Nashville? That doesn't sound like anything don't be bashful.
Yeah, well, yeah, I got to be careful with some of it, but yeah. So in White Sands, every year that I don't know how many people are familiar. Not every year, every other year, they do a thing called JAMX, and it's a jamming and awareness exercise mostly for public safety responders, both on the technical side and the awareness side. And as time goes on, as public safety, have difficulty in the field with, either intentional or unintentional jamming, is how do you work through that? So what are the steps you do to resolve that, work through it, and report it? And so that's what that exercise is. So everybody gets together in really the desert out there, and you got teams giving each other a hard time, and jamming, and learning how to work through problems. And it's a really cool experience. A lot of the national and federal teams are involved, and so they alternate. That is one time it's in White Sands, the next time I believe it's in Idaho or one of the other ranges. And we did have some auxiliary communications part of that, so that's that's a great event. The other ones are the DHS or CISA, and I don't want to be focus on that here, but they do have that technical assistance offering that has all those classes and different types of exercises and things you can request. The state can request, so whoever the SWIC or ESF2 rep is, and that'll give you an idea of the things we do. But Michigan Region 5 had an exercise not too long ago. I was up in Michigan, got to spend some time with Max. I don't know if Max is on here. Max is a great guy, and a lot to be proud of in Michigan up there. And so I spent some time with him, and we did a lot of work up there. And let's see where else. Wisconsin, going to Wisconsin next week. SimCom, and I will be with some amateur radio folks up there, and we'll be exercising.
You're keeping pretty busy.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That you just don't know.
You're being really modest here.
Well, you know how that is. I hassle Steve all the time on stuff. So, but it's great. And like I said, I appreciate what you guys are doing. From the public safety side, it's tough to get folks engaged, at the amateur radio level. And, I really appreciate the work you're doing, getting folks together, sharing stuff, and trying to progress. So it's good. We need to.
If you have any or know people in your circle that would like to get some presentations to help for that, appreciate that. That's what we're here to try to do.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Sure will. And I'll talk to Steve. I've got one that I'd like to do for y'all that kind of shows how amateur radio is used in healthcare in our region. how we leverage WinLink and shares and some of the other tools, and is actually one of our, when we talk about a PACE plan, it's in our PACE plan, and is used pretty extensively. So
Okay. Look forward to that. I don't see any hands up. I don't see anything in the chat.
Matt,
Do
you want to
Barry?
set a date for that?
I tell you what is I'll work with you and Dan or whoever you want me to, and I need to look at my calendar and and look at y'all's and see what lines up there. But yes, absolutely. I will follow
I
up on that
forgot
in the
you
next
said
week.
you were retired. I forgot.
That's from job one.
Okay.
We're good in the chat, Dan.
All right. No hands are up. Do we have any just general comments here? Kind of open up to the floor.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks. It's a fantastic presentation, and it's getting me really excited to give it a try. I've thought about it for years, so really want to try it out. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. If we can help in any way, let us know. That's how Tom Edlin, I bothered him on Facebook more times than I care to mention, and he was great help to us. Thanks.
Cool.
Thank you very much for showing up, and we all appreciate everything you're saying here.
Yes, sir.
Eric, where do you live?
I'm in Burlington, Vermont.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, if you're out here on the West Coast, I'd hook you up with Brian Bagier. He does quite a few Pico launches.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. If anybody knows anyone in the Northeast who does that, I'd love to hear about that too. Thank you.
All right.
I got a question.
Go for it.
We're dealing with a small private school, just starting a radio club, and we thought about doing a balloon. They're middle school kids. Any advice as to what kind? I didn't know there were kind of balloons and everything. This is all new to me. Any advice about that?
Yeah. So the one good thing is some of these manufacturers, I know SBS is one of them, that if you're doing a STEM project, with a school or it's related to that, they offer some of the stuff at a discounted rate. So that's one benefit. But if you look at a lot of the folks that are doing balloons, they are those type of projects. And the one thing that's a little bit way to offset some of that cost is, if you can do it as a group or a club, or and you're doing it with a school and trying to get that involvement, it's a little easier on the wallet to everybody chips in 10, $20, and if something goes wrong, it happens. But I tell you, seeing what some of these school kids do, and they're just as energetic as some of these adults that don't do any radio stuff, and they're like, oh man, the balloon's over Iraq today, and they're where's it at tomorrow, and it's almost like they look forward to it every day. And hey, that's why we're doing it too.
The modern day version of SWL.
Exactly.
So are there some websites that we should look at to get us started? I mean, we don't know anything.
Yeah. So what I would type in, and if in this presentation, you can go back to it once we get off, is Bill Brown with his call sign. And when you type him in, it will go directly to a lot of his balloon stuff. That's kind of what he's famous for. And Tom as well, and type in his call sign and just type in balloon in a Google search, and they have a wealth of information up there. And you can start there. Just do a Google search of Pico balloon, and you'll get a lot come back there. And you can go to the SBS website, ZachTech, which makes one of the trackers, and gosh, there's so many of them now. But yeah, just do some simple searches and you'll get a lot.
Okay, hopefully that's very helpful. I have learned a lot in this presentation. Appreciate it, Matt.
Yes, sir.